welcome to another quick review. So this one will be about BMW DDC settings and possible solution to a trouble if you have a trouble to calibrate the bike as well. So this is my bike, 2018 model, and I did a few geometry changes. This is how I got into trouble with suspension action. DDC suspension action on this bike. So I did some changes. So I raised my bike on forks, only fork caps are showing, and I decreased the swing arm angle by using the top shock mount eccentric, which you can see where the top shock bolt goes in, and this is, as you can see, it is inversed, so the hole is in the top position, and this eccentric is from model year 2012, because 2012 had one more by the offset from the center of that eccentric in 2012 is by 1 millimeter more than the offset of 2015 and up eccentric. This is 2.5 millimeters, and on this bike stock is 1.5 millimeters. Also, what I did, I loosened all the bolts, of course, the top shock bolts, the bottom shock bolts, and all the bolts in the swing arm linkage. One is here, and now is on this side, but you probably see it. It basically goes somewhere under where this triangle just connects to the swing arm, and then another one is behind this plastic over here. So it's right here. If you remove the plastic, you will see it. So when I loosened all these bolts, I could see that the play in the swing arm is approximately 10 millimeters up and down on the free play within those bolts. And I put the bike on a side stand as it is right now, so the weight would be applied to all the linkage bolts, so they would set themselves into right positions, and when I tighten everything up, and that gave me approximately 10 degrees of a swing arm angle as it sits right now. And this 10 degrees is when the bike is sitting on its own weight, exactly straight, so supported against the wall, not on the side stand, but against the wall, or your friend holding your bike upright. So this is how I measure swing arm angle, and of course with a right sack set, so it will come down to that later. So why I did this, so when I inspected the photos of HP4As, I noticed what in the rear we have a swing arm angle approximately 9 degrees when the bike is sitting on its own weight. Actually just a bit less than that, about something like 8.9, something like that, but it might be some error in my measurement as well. So close to the 9 degrees. So this bike from the factory has much more than that. It's close to like 10.7 or something like that. So with this modification I managed to get to 10 degrees, which is fine. So it's closer, but there is nothing you can do except for just replacing this part with a different offset, so the hole would be lower, and then you can achieve like even less swing arm angle. But in that case, riding up to might be a problem when the bike is loaded, but for solo riding that will be fine. So maybe in the future I'm gonna do that, but not at the moment. Right, so when I did all these changes, I noticed what my DDC suspension work wasn't that great at all. So I had to remove a lot of compression damping through the adjustment through the dash, despite the calibrating it, of course, as the BMW manual specifies. And on the side stand, you hit the calibration and nothing. Well, it calibrates, but nothing helps. So too much compression damping, not insufficient rebound damping. And I started to figure, so what's happening, It shouldn't be like that, because I thought if you calibrate through the dash, then everything's supposed to be fine. But it's not like that. Also, what I did is, you see this connecting rod here, which connects the swing arm with a sensor. So because I did all these modifications in the rear, I figured that maybe the sensor is not in the right position right now, so I shortened that arm by approximately 3 millimeters. So I disassembled it and shortened it, and then assembled it back. So this is a bit which I cut off. So it's a little piece of that rod, 3 millimeters. Right, so when sensors was set in some approximate, more or less correct position in its travel, but suspension still didn't work very well. and I couldn't figure out why. I almost was at the point to give up and replace everything with a manual setup, and to improve things. And I was certain that this is the only way to do, to get this bike some sensible suspension. And yeah, so the preload on the rear shock right now I have is a 10 turns in. On the preload adjuster and the shock, which is hydraulic preload adjuster located right here. Yeah, this is the preload adjuster, 10 turns in. And on the forks, they have like 3 lines or blocks showing. It's about in the middle of a preload adjuster. This is to get the sack numbers right, because the bike from the factory has no preload on the forks and no preload on the shock at all, which for fast riding is not good. The bike sits too low with my weight, which is 83 kilograms without gear. And you could see that when you're braking by the zip tie, it gets to the bottom. So, and of course it's not gonna go to very bottom to right to axle casting, because there are rubber dampers within these forks, which stops it from doing so. But you still need some suspension travel when you turn and you're going over bumps. But anyway, so regarding the DDC calibration, and before I shortened the road, the bike wouldn't want to calibrate like that, sitting on a side stand. That's again quite a bad sign. When I shortened the road, it started to calibrate, but still didn't work correctly. So the answer to all of that, and I guess that will help mostly the guys who actually for some reason could not calibrate their bikes against when the bike is on a side stand, and I read about this in the forums. The answer to that is this. So you need to go to your dealer. And what they can do, so in their diagnostic software, they have a function to calibrate this sensor. So the sensor has 3 parameters to it. One parameter is just a bare voltage, and this is a voltage which is read from the sensor by the computer. And that's supposed to be somewhere in the middle of a range, and that depends on the length of your connecting rod here, and also at the modifications. Basically depends on the modifications you did to rear suspension. Is it like higher one before, is it lower one before? But these are just dependency on that. So voltage can be only changed if you changing the length of this rod. So you're making it longer or making it shorter. In any case, the voltage is changing. It should be somewhere in the middle of the range, and that's fine. So the next step, what the dealer can do is we can set the zero position for the sensor, and that 0 position will remember where like voltage and market is 0. So this is the 0 position of the sensor, and that is a must, and that improves things dramatically. And also to do that 0 position calibration, you need to take all the preload from the shock spring, right? So it would be in kind of a factory setup, like with all preload out of the rear spring, like rear of the shock. The bike's supposed to be sitting on the side stand, exactly like that. I know it sounds stupid, and this is a very strange way how BMW decided to do it, but when all the preload is out on the shock, and the bike sitting on a side stand, and 2 wheels touching the ground, exactly like it is now, we just hit that calibration button, and it calibrates and remembers the 0 position. And the 0 position is exactly like that, and the bike is on a side stand. The funny thing is operational range of this sensor is something from -5 to +65 or something like that. And then after this calibration, if you lift the rear into the air, you will get a reading on their computer to -5. So it gets into the right operational range. So -5 means shock is fully extended, and the rest of the values like counted from that position for whatever reason. But this is how it needs to be for whatever reason. So when that procedure is done, now you can add your preload to get the setting right to the shock. And to me, again, it's a 10 turns of a preload adjuster. And that corresponds to something like a 10 millimeters of free sack of a bike. And with my weight in the gear, approximately 28 millimeters when I'm sitting on a bike, something like that. I don't remember exact numbers, but it doesn't really matter. So remember, I need to do a 10 turns on the preload adjuster when I'm fine. And so when you add the preload to the shock, Now we need to put it on a side stand again, and through the dash, through the menu where you calibrate your DDC suspension as by the user manual. So let me show you. So through this menu you go into the setup menu, DDC system, and get in there. And when the bike is sitting on a side stand, you just hit the calibration and hold the button there, so bike will recalibrate. And what it results to is what now the bike knows where was a standard setting, OEM setting, because it was just like overwritten by your dealer. With your setup for in terms of a geometry, and can calculate by how much now the position changed because of your preload change, and it's going to be taken into account in the suspension work. So in my case, the difference we measured was plus 2 millimeters on the sensor, and the sensor measures the shock travel, not the rear suspension travel. So plus 2 in there means approximately plus 4 in the, let's say, the rear suspension height. So this is the procedure. So you go to your dealer, right? Ask him to recalibrate the rear sensor, set the 0 position. And before doing that, you need to take all the preload from the rear shock, get it to a dealer, so we set the 0 position for your suspension sensor. Then you add the preload and recalibrate the bike from the dash. Again, all of that needs to be done when the bike is like that, 2 wheels touching the ground and it is on the side stand. And that's it. So after that, when I took it for a ride, it became like night and day difference. So everything works fine with all the zeros in the adjustment of the rear suspension. So the 0 for rebound damping and 0 for compression damping in the rear with 10 turns of a preload, and that recalibration did wonders. So everything works just perfect. Probably, I don't know, easily the best rear suspension I ever had on the Super Sport. Yeah, the front is not that great. So front still I have, let's say, plus 2 in the damping. It's a DMP adjustment for the front. It doesn't have separate compression and rebound adjustment, so I had it to plus 2. Then I have front more or less compliant to what I needed to do, but it could be better. Problem with the front, but the bike comes with no front suspension sensor, and I did bought that sensor from 2D. I got it actually from Alpha Racing, but it's a 2D sensor. And I tried to install it, but the sensor hits the radiator. I won't be able to see it, but you won't be able to do a full like lock-to-lock turn. So in order for the front suspension sensor not to hit the radiator, you need to install the rubber dampers which come with that sensor, but in that case you won't be able to use the front the steering lock with a key, so it would not turn so much, so it would lock, first of all, and second of all, driving like on a normal roads, the turn radius will be much higher. So in some cases, doing U-turns, it becomes a problem. Tight U-turns will be a problem. So that's why I didn't like finish with that yet. But what I'm thinking, I still need to put the sensor into the front. So if that, because I remember when I tried it, when I rode the bike with a front sensor, when everything was stock, it improved the front action dramatically, front suspension action dramatically. And so the sensor does really make sense. The thing is, I just need to figure out how to install it so it would not hit the radiator. And I'm thinking maybe I can drill a hole right here at the bottom and mount the sensor lower, so it would be below the lower triple clamp, and so it would not touch the radiator. So that would involve like drilling a small hole in here for the sensor connector, and not the connector, this is just like a ball type of a mechanical connector for bottom of a sensor. Drill a hole, put some thread on it, and just install it here, and then I can install sensor below a lower triple clamp, I hope. Yeah, and that should solve it potentially. So I'll try to do that. It shouldn't like compromise the integrity of this bead, because it's kind of very thin here and gets thicker. It's quite wide, so it should be fine. Hopefully, yeah, that's a plan. I'm not sure will it be successful yet or not. But yeah, generically for all those guys having a DDC calibration problems, those guys who actually not satisfied with how the DDC suspension works and wonder why it's so bad, especially those who did the changes in the geometry of a bike as I did. Yeah, the answer to that is go to the dealer and ask them to recalibrate the zero position of a rear sensor, and then it will all comes back to life. Also, if you have a race calibration kit, then you can do it yourself. So there is a procedure that allows for it. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty much it. Hope that was helpful, and have a great whatever time of the day you have. Bye bye.